Welcome back to Carrion Creature Feature. I'm your host, Aura, and tonight's tale is full of gory delight as we delve into a phobia that strikes at the very heart of innocence, the fear of buttons. Prepare to unravel the threads of your sanity as we sew together a tale of terror, where the innocuous becomes the insidious and the mundane transforms into a terror. But before we begin, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay tuned for more stomach-churning tales of horror. Brace yourself, as this next story is stitched with the fabric of your deepest fears. Buttons are the vilest thing I've ever seen, let alone touched. Round, square, oval, and any other shape. I can't stand them. The thought of slipping my fingernail on the edge of one sends me into a panic. They adorn everything, like tiny roaches nesting, ready to infest anything. Where there's one button, there's bound to be more. Do you know how hard it is to find clothing without buttons? Once I was brave enough to cut them off with scissors. However, after an episode in which I found my arm trapped within a sleeve collapsed by a button, I swore off even touching the damn things. In my closet, there are exactly 3 pairs of pants, 6 gym shorts, 10 t-shirts, 3 formal long-sleeve shirts, 2 sundresses, and 2 jackets, all without buttons. People are so assuming with buttons. They put them on dolls, use them as counters, and even decorations. Ugh. Reach in your pocket and find a spare button waiting for you like a black widow inside a crawl space. The thought makes me shudder. Foul things. Who would ever think to create such a horrible accessory? Buttons are everywhere, and on everything. Look at yourself. You're wearing buttons as we speak. Like fat, bloated ticks hanging on the folds of your clothes. A world without buttons would be fine with me. Burn 'em all. That's what I say. My therapist calls it Koumpounophobia, but he also says I have schizophrenia and antisocial tendencies. I meet with him at least 3 times a week, and for the most part, it helps. I don't think I'll ever be cured of the condition, and to be frank, I'm not looking to be. However, therapy has allowed me to tolerate my fear. I know what you're thinking. How could anyone have such a phobia? To me, buttons invoke a crippling fear akin to a venomous snake. Sure, not every snake is ready to strike, but would you go over and pick one up? If you were to meet me, you'd probably think I'm normal, although I can be awkward at times. I work virtually, so there's no going into the office for me. I don't have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, but I've been told that I'm pretty. I enjoy many things you probably do, like watching Friends or having the occasional beer. However, I tend to get anxiety the longer I'm around people, which makes me a bit of a recluse. Oh, and I love comics, the pulp kind. You know, Weird Tales, Creepshow, that kind of stuff. So I guess life is semi-normal for me. Or at least, it was. I should back up a bit. I live in a modest apartment complex on the outskirts of Charlotte, North Carolina. I've been there for at least 5 years and had no issues at all. I tend to stay inside except when I'm taking the trash out or need to run an errand. This afternoon, I'm checking the mail like I always do. Nothing much. A few bills, a credit card promotion, and a letter from a sewing outlet company. I don't think much of it as I go about sifting through the stack of letters. After separating the bills, I set the rest of the mail down on the kitchen counter. I'm in the middle of pouring myself a glass of chocolate milk when I notice free prize inside on the outlet letter. Being a little curious, I tear the envelope open, pulling a few papers out, when 4 buttons the size of a quarter fall onto the counter. Instantly, I jump back, flinging the chocolate milk across the room. The cup shatters, sending shards of glass skittering across the floor. I run from the kitchen to the safety of the hallway, where it takes me a good 5 minutes to catch my breath. My heart is still beating fast when I decide to peer out from the hallway into the kitchen. 4 hideous red buttons sit flat on my kitchen countertops. For a few moments, I think about putting some gloves on and removing them. But these buttons are large, and I've only dealt with small ones before. I think about grabbing a broom, but then I spot it on the opposite end of the kitchen, which means I'll have to walk in front of the buttons. Something that doesn't sit well with me. Then the ringer of my phone goes off, making me almost jump out of my skin. I look down to the floor to see it in a puddle of chocolate milk and broken glass. Fuck. I walk back down the hallway, cursing myself for the situation I'm in. And then I get an idea. I'll go next door and see if my neighbor John can help. I cringe at this thought, knowing I'll be replacing the buttons with a creep. But if I play it right, I can get the buttons out of my sight and then deal with him, which is much better than living the rest of my life in the hallway. I won't even mention the buttons. I'll just say I dropped the milk and need some help cleaning it up. I make my way out the front door and walk to John's apartment, where I ring the doorbell. After a few seconds of waiting, the door is jerked open, and an overpowering stench of weed hits me. It's John, holding a bong with bright red eyes. He leans in the doorway, surprised to see me, and I can almost see the exact second when his mind goes into full sleazebag mode. "What's up, pretty thing? I was just thinking about you," he says, his body swaying back and forth. My social anxiety is starting to go into overdrive as I squeeze my hands until the nails dig into my palms. I take a few deep breaths, closing my eyes before speaking. "Could you help me with something in my apartment?" John smiles, revealing a row of bright yellow-stained teeth as he reaches into his sweatpants and begins to scratch his crotch. "Sure, baby. Whatever you need." It takes us several minutes to get back to my apartment, despite it being next door. When we finally enter my apartment, I'm not sure if John can stand straight. He walks past the hallway, ignoring the shattered glass, heading for my couch when I stop him. I know if I let him sit, I won't be able to get him up for hours to come. Instead, I nudge him to face the kitchen counter where the buttons are. "John, can you throw those buttons and papers in the trash while I get something to clean up the milk?" I say, pointing towards the kitchen counter. John sways for a moment, and then looks back at me with hungry eyes. "Sure, baby. Just give me a kiss first." I grimace and back away, my face clearly conveying a look of repulsion that John can see. "What the fuck, bitch? You come to my house with those nice titties asking me to come to your place, and now you're changing your mind?" I put my hands up trying to calm the situation, when he turns away from me and walks toward the counter, crushing glass beneath his feet. He stops, looks down at the buttons before swinging his head to look back at me with another wide smile. "I get it now. This is supposed to be like one of those porn films. You know, where the plumber comes over to clean the housewife's pipes." The words make me sick, but I can't take my eyes off the buttons just inches from his fingertips. John turns back to face the counter when one of the buttons slides towards him. My mouth drops open as I step behind the couch. I don't think he notices, because he reaches down and picks the button up, placing it in the palm of his right hand. Suddenly, he jerks back, a look of pain stretching across his face as the button begins to bore down into his palm. I can see the blood starting to leak from his outstretched hand as he tries to pry the button out using his fingers. Then the other 3 buttons seem to jump onto him like fleas to a dog. One of the buttons lands dead center on his left cheek, while the others have squirmed beneath his t-shirt. John instinctively goes to the button that is now slipping under the skin of his cheek. His head shakes violently as the button works itself up towards his nose. I continue to retreat until my back presses against the living room wall. John stumbles forward, catching himself on the refrigerator with bloody hands. His eyes search the living room until they find me, pleading for help. I'm frozen in place, struggling to breathe as the room seems to swirl around me. I can feel my feet getting heavier, my heart pounding against my chest. Then, John's left eye explodes out of its socket with an audible pop. His body goes rigid as the button emerges. Then the right eye follows with another burst of gore, and he crumples to the floor. I feel weak in the knees. I want to throw up. and as I take a step forward, I black out. Later, I wake up in the darkness of my apartment. I must have been out for a few hours. My head hurts, and there's a dull pain in my elbow from the fall. Using the couch, I'm able to prop myself up and investigate the kitchen. Everything is silent except for my heavy breathing as I tiptoe to the lamp in the corner. I feel around under the shade, finding the switch and turning the knob. Bright light washes across the room as I stand motionless, searching the dark recesses of the apartment. My phone is only a few feet away, the couch blocking my view of the kitchen floor. Summoning up the courage, I sneak towards my phone, my eyes fixated on the spot where I last saw John. As I move closer, I can see the broken glass and the dried milk, but John is nowhere. Perhaps he was able to find help after I passed out? Then another thought hits me hard. What if I'm hallucinating? Wouldn't be the first time I've mistakenly seen something, but not on this level. I try to push the thought out of my head, but the prospect of being committed to a mental ward still lingers. Then, there's a soft squeak down the hall, the type a sneaker makes when it scuffs a smooth surface. I look up to see John walking out of the darkness. My initial reaction is that of relief, but this is soon replaced with terror as I see light shimmering off his red button eyes. He opens his mouth as hundreds of small, gory buttons vomit forth. I fall back across the room, knocking the lamp to the floor. John smiles, his teeth now plastic buttons coated in dried blood. I scream just as the room goes dark. For the love of God, no more fucking buttons! Tonight's tale has certainly left us reeling in its wake. We've delved into the darkest corners of fear, exploring a phobia that has left us drenched in gore. As we bid farewell, remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to ensure you never miss another frightful story. Stay tuned for more bone-shattering tales that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Until next time, brace yourself, for your deepest fears await in the shadows of Carrion Creature Feature.